Welcome to Sun Meadow Temple. We are so happy you've joined us. My name is Alba and I use she, her pronouns. This is our first observance of 2024 and I'm so happy you are here. As always, this service is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. I'm so excited to announce that this month we are trying out our first slideshow night. Anyone who wants to participate can make a slideshow about anything pagan related and email it to us. You can present it on February 3rd. We are also looking into creating a National Pagan Pride Day for everyone to celebrate. This holiday will not be associated with us as a business and is simply a fun project driven by members. So we will open today with our opening words, which will appear on the slide behind you. Please feel free to read along at home, or just listen as I read them. We welcome you into the light of the gods and light this flame in celebration. May its brightness symbolize our connection to the gods and the natural world. May you join us in this community of faith, cherishing love and with open hearts. So our theme this month is change and tradition with a focus on praxis and theology. So to be clear, praxis is the literal practices that come from religious beliefs, and theology is the study of the religious beliefs that come alongside those. So our reading today is Euthyphro by Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett. Keep in mind that Socrates does not keep his thoughts short in any sense of the word, so this reading will be longer than normal, which is why we only have one. So this excerpt does require some background to understand. So Socrates is meeting with the man called Euthyphro on the porch of the king Archon, as they both have legal business. And Euthyphro is suing his father for murder, while Socrates is being sued for corrupting the youth of Athens, which is a suit that eventually leads him to be executed by the state. Socrates, rare friend, I think that I cannot do better than be your disciple. Then before the trial with Meletus comes on, I shall challenge him and say that I have always had great interest in religious questions, and now, as he charges me with rash imaginations and innovations in religion, I have become your disciple. You, Meletus, as I shall say to him, acknowledge Euthyphro to be a great theologian and sound in his opinions, and if you approve of him, you ought to approve of me, and not have me into court, but if you disapprove, you should begin by indicting him who is my teacher, and who will be the ruin, not of the young, but of the old. That is to say, of myself, whom he instructs, and of his father, whom he admonishes and chastises. And if Meletus refuses to listen to me, but will go on, as will not shift the indictment from me to you, I cannot do better than repeat this challenge to the court. Euthyphro. Yes, indeed, Socrates, and if he attempts to indict me, I am mistaken if I do not find a flaw in him. The court shall have a great deal more to say to him than to me. Socrates. And I, my dear friend, knowing this, am desirous of becoming your disciple, for I observe that no one appears to notice you, not even this Meletus, but his sharp eyes have found me out at once, and he has indicted me for impiety, and therefore I adjure you to tell me the nature of piety and impiety, which you said that you knew so well, and of murder, and of other offenses against the gods. What are they? Is not piety in every action always the same? And impiety, again, is it not always the opposite of piety, and also the same with itself, having, as in piety, one notion which includes whatever is impious? Euthyphro. To be sure, Socrates. Socrates. And what is piety, and what is impiety? Euthyphro. Piety is doing as I am doing, that is to say, prosecuting anyone who is guilty of murder, sacrilege, or of any similar crime, whether he be your father or mother, or whoever he may be, that makes no difference. And not to prosecute them is impiety. And please to consider, Socrates, what a notable proof I will give you of the truth of my words, a proof which I have already given to others, of the principle I mean, that the impious, whoever he may be, ought not to go unpunished. For do not men regard Zeus as the best and most righteous of the gods? And yet they admit that he bound his father, Cronos, because he wickedly devoured his sons, and that he too had punished his own father, Uranus, for a similar reason in a nameless manner. And yet when I proceed against my father, they are angry with me. So inconsistent are they in their way of talking where the gods are concerned, and when I am concerned. Socrates. May this may not this be the reason, Euthyphro, why I am charged with impiety? That I cannot away with these stories about the gods, and therefore I suppose that people think me wrong? But as you who are well informed about them approve of them, I cannot do better than assent to your superior wisdom. What else can I say, confessing as I do, that I know nothing about them? Tell me, for the love of Zeus, whether you really believe that they are true. Euthyphro: Yes, Socrates, and things more wonderful still, of which the world is in ignorance. Socrates: And do you really believe that the gods fought with one another and had dire quarrels and battles, and the like, as the poets say, and as you may see represented in the works of great artists? The temples are full of them, and notably the robe of Athene, which is carried up to the Acropolis at the great Panathenaea, is embroidered with them. Are all these tales of the gods true, Euthyphro? Euthyphro: And yes, Socrates, and as I was saying, I can tell you, if you would like to hear, many other things about the gods which would quite amaze you. Socrates: I dare say, and you shall tell me them at some point other time when I have leisure. But just at present I would rather hear from you a more precise answer, which you have not as yet given, my friend, the question, what is piety? When asked, you only replied, doing as you do, charging your father with murder. Euthyphro: And what I said was true, Socrates. Socrates: No doubt, Euthyphro, but would you admit that there are many other pious acts? Euthyphro: There are. Socrates: Remember that I did not ask you to give me 2 or 3 examples of piety, but to explain the general idea which makes all pious things to be pious. Do you not recollect that there was one idea which made the impious impious, and the pious pious? Euthyphro: I remember. Socrates: Tell me what is the nature of this idea, and then I shall have a standard to which I may look, and by which I may measure actions, whether yours or those of anyone else, and then I shall be able to say that such and such action is pious, and such another impious. Euthyphro: I will tell you, if you like. Socrates: I should very much like. Euthyphro: Piety, then, is that which is dear to the gods, and impiety is that which is not dear to them. Socrates: Very good, Euthyphro. You have now given me the sort of answer which I wanted. But whether or what you say is true or not, I cannot as yet tell, although I make no doubt that you will prove the truth of your words. Euthyphro: Of course. Socrates: Come then, and let us examine what we are saying. That thing or person which is dear to the gods is pious, and that thing or person which is hateful to the gods is impious. These two being the extreme opposites of one another. Was not then said? Euthyphro: It was. Socrates: And well said? Euthyphro: Yes, Socrates, I thought so, it was certainly said. Socrates: And further, Euthyphro, the gods were admitted to have enmities and hatreds and differences. Euthyphro: Yes, that was also said. Socrates: And what sort of difference creates enmity and anger? Suppose, for example, that you and I, my good friend, differ about a number. Do differences of this sort make us enemies and set us at variance with one another? Do we not go at once to arithmetic and put an end to them by a sum? Euthyphro: True. Socrates: Or suppose that we differ about magnitudes. Do we not quickly end the differences by measuring? Euthyphro: Very true. Socrates: And we end a controversy about heavy and light by resorting to a weighing machine. Euthyphro: To be sure. Socrates: But what differences are there which cannot be thus decided, and which therefore make us angry, and set us at enmity with one another? I dare say the answer does not occur to you at the moment, and therefore I will suggest that these enmities arise when the matters of difference are the just and unjust, good and evil, honorable and dishonorable. Are these not the points about which men differ, and about which, when we are unable to satisfactorily to decide our differences, you and I and all of us quarrel when we do quarrel? Euthyphro: Yes, Socrates, the nature of the differences about which we quarrel is such as you describe. Socrates: And the quarrels of the gods, noble Euthyphro, when they occur, are of a like nature. Euthyphro: They certainly are. Socrates: They have differences of opinion, as you say, about good and evil, just and unjust, honorable and dishonorable. There would have been no quarrels among them. If there had been no such differences, would there now? Euthyphro, you are quite right. Socrates, does not every man love that which he deems noble, just, and good, and hate the opposite of them? Euthyphro, very true. Socrates, but as you say, people regard the same things, some as just, others as unjust. About these they dispute, and so there arise wars and fightings among them. Euthyphro, very true. Socrates, then the same things are hated by the gods and loved by the gods, and are both hateful and dear to them. Euthyphro, true. Socrates, upon this view, the same things, Euthyphro, will be both pious and impious. Euthyphro, I should suppose. Socrates, then, my friend, I will mark with surprise that you have not answered the question which I asked, for I certainly did not ask you to tell me what action is both pious and impious, but now it would seem that what is loved by the gods is also hated by them, and therefore, Euthyphro, in thus chastising your father, you may very likely be doing what is agreeable to Zeus but disagreeable to Cronos or Uranus, and what is acceptable to Hephaestus but unacceptable to Hera, and there may be other gods who have similar differences of opinion. Euthyphro, but I believe, Socrates, that all the gods would be agreed as to the propriety of punishing a murderer. There would be no difference of opinion about that. Socrates, well, speaking of men, Euthyphro, did you ever hear anyone arguing that murder or any sort of evildoer ought to be let off? Euthyphro, I should rather say that these are questions which they are always arguing, especially in courts of law. They commit all sorts of crimes, and there is nothing that they will not do or say in their own defense. Socrates, but do they admit their guilt, Euthyphro, and yet say that they ought not to be punished? Euthyphro, no, they do not. Socrates, then there are some things which they do not venture to say and do, for they do not venture to argue that the guilty are to be unpunished, but they deny their guilt, do they not? Euthyphro, yes. Socrates, then they do not argue that the evildoer should not be punished, but they argue about the fact of who the evildoer is, and what he did and when. Euthyphro, true. Socrates, and the gods are in the same case. If, as you assert, they quarrel about just and unjust, and some of them say, while others deny that injustice is done among them, for surely neither God nor man will ever venture to say that the doer of injustice is not to be punished. Euthyphro, that is true, Socrates, in the main. Socrates, but they join issue about the particulars, gods and men alike, and if they dispute at all, they dispute about some act which is called in question, and which by some is affirmed to be just, and by others is affirmed to be unjust. Is not that true? Euthyphro, quite true. Socrates, well then, my dear friend Euthyphro, do tell me, for my better instruction and information, what proof you have that in the opinion of all the gods, a servant who is guilty of murder, and is put in chains by the master of the dead man, and dies because he is put in chains, before he who bound him can learn from the interpreters of the gods what he ought to do with him, dies unjustly, and that on behalf of such an one a son ought to proceed against his father and accuse him of murder. How would you show that all the gods absolutely agree in approving of his act? Prove to me that they do, and I will applaud your wisdom as long as I live. Euthyphro, it will be a difficult task, but I could make the matter very clear to you indeed. Socrates, I understand you mean to say that I am not so quick of apprehension as the judges, for to them you will be sure to prove that the act is unjust and hateful to the gods. Euthyphro, yes indeed, Socrates, at least if they will listen to me. Socrates, but they will be sure to listen if they find that you are a good speaker. There was a notion that came into mind while you were speaking. I said to myself, well, and what if Euthyphro does prove to me that all the gods regarded the death of the serf as unjust? How do I know anything more about the nature of piety and impiety? For granting this action may be hateful to the gods, still piety and impiety are not adequately defined by these distinctions. For that which is hateful to the gods and has been shown to also be pleasing and dear to them. And therefore, Euthyphro, I do not ask you to prove this, I will suppose, if you like, that all the gods condemn and abominate such an action, but I'll amend the definition so far as to say that what all the gods hate is impious, and what they love is pious or holy. And what some of them love and others hate is both or neither. Shall this be your definition of piety and impiety? Euthyphro: Why not, Socrates? Socrates: Why not? Certainly, as far as I am concerned, Euthyphro, there is no reason to act as why not. But whether this admission will greatly assist you in the task of instructing me as you promise is a matter for you to consider. Yes, Euthyphro. Euthyphro, yes. I should say that what all the gods love is pious and holy, and the opposite, which they all hate, is impious. Socrates: Ought not we to inquire into the truth of this, Euthyphro, or are we simply to accept the mere statement of our own authority and that of others? What do you say? Euthyphro: We should inquire, and I believe that the statement will stand the test of inquiry. They then go on to test this theory by comparing it to the act of being loved and carried precedes the state of being loved and carried. Or in other words, do the gods love something because it is good and hate it because it is bad? Or is the act of God loving it make it good, and the act of the gods hating it make it bad? Socrates then asks a similar question to his previous one about piety being just, assuming the reasonable response is all piety just? If yes, then are all the just pious? If no, then what part of justice is pious? Euthyphro then distinguished between justice among men and justice in regards to the gods, with justice in regards to the gods being pious. And then Euthyphro has to leave, and we never learn the nature of piety, but we certainly have learned what it is not. So if you remember about a year ago, I wrote about mythic literalism using a smaller excerpt of the above writing. Euthyphro was a mythic literalist, and if you cannot tell, Socrates is not. But this sort of philosophical reasoning and mythic understanding helps to form the praxis of all our traditions. Nowadays, many of the loudest religious voices are mythic literalists, but in paganism, mythic literalism is not common. However, that does not mean we have to change the praxis of our belief, that we need to adapt to new discoveries. Hanging on to beliefs that thousands of years ago were considered irrational does us no good in the long run. Plato took a more extreme view than most modern pagans and thought that myths were heretical because they compared the gods to mortals and made them act like mortals. His perspective is obviously more complicated than this, as he realizes that these are works of poetry, but he does take issue with depictions of the gods as doing immoral things. Many of us now take a middling view on these ideas. Obviously, we cannot be mythically literal, we also cannot disregard the myths outright. We cannot also fall into the same traps as others whose philosophical holes have been exposed even after the disappearance of pagan practices. We have to accept the change that has come with time, all while still preserving praxis that came before as much as possible. We will now move into the ritual part of the observance. I now have the recorded video offerings, which will now play on the screen behind you. I hope you all enjoy. We leave this offering for our gods to symbolize our connection and devotion. We gift this rock to symbolize the stability of the gods in our world. We gift this water to accept the flow of our lives. We welcome life and bless our offerings with oil to share our riches. We embrace our connection to each other and the world and celebrate our revival. We will now do our closing words. As with the opening words, you are free to listen or read along with them at home. As we move out into the world, let us remember our community of faith. Cherish love and open your heart as you walk through life. Hold dear the light of the gods and our connection with the natural world. Go forth in celebration and carry the light of connection within your heart.